And when you feel lost and you reach that point where you're on that downward trajectory, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to have the humility to get back on track. You know everything you should be doing. You know in your brain that you should be taking these steps, but applying yourself and taking those steps shows you how far you've fallen, and that pain most times feels better avoided. Isn't better avoided, but it feels better avoided. For me, it came from what I perceived to be a failure. Really and truly, I was just counting myself out prematurely, but I felt like I failed at my endeavor. And yeah, it felt like everything I was doing, all my attempts was falling flat on his face. And so self-doubt started to creep in. And synonymous with everything, the call to create was still there. And so I would try, and then after the fifth attempt and failure, quote unquote failure, I started to avoid that call. I started to turn to escapism instead of creating. I'll spend my time consuming, trying to numb my mind out, because it feels really shitty, to be honest. It feels like a shitty. To have this thing inside of you, and it feels it's burning to come out. But then also at the same time, each attempt that you give birth to it feels like a miscarriage. So to avoid all that pain, I went to escapism. And that was that. The problem with escapism is that when you aren't present in your life, when you aren't present for yourself, you and your life starts to deteriorate. And that started happening to me, where many of my good habits, many of the commitments that I had to myself in certain areas started falling away, started becoming increasingly hard to keep myself applied to. Plus, escapism calls for more of it. And then there'll be certain moments of clarity when you're painfully aware of everything that you are doing and the trajectory that you're on. And that in itself is painful. Ideally, at moments like that, you would readjust your course and kind of stop the trajectory that you're going on, but for a good point of time, for a good point in time, I ended up I went more into escapism, to escape that feeling. And I started to hate myself for it, genuinely. Maybe once in a while I would decide, you know what, this is the end. I'm gonna get back on track now. Delete everything. Set up app blocks, time limits on certain apps, and social media. But then, half a day later, I'll be back to the same old habits, the same lifestyle, the same numbing myself out. And I'll hate myself for that. For a solid period of time, I would genuinely walk around with such a feeling of, I would feel physically sick to my stomach. I hate myself because I would know that in spite of how sick I felt to my stomach, even if I decided that I would change, that change wouldn't last long. And the trajectory wasn't a good trajectory. Nonetheless, kind of got better when I stopped beating myself up so much. I kind of realized that the main reason why I didn't improve was because I didn't have the humility to start back from scratch, to go back to the utter bare minimum. Just as a starting point. I didn't have the immunity for that. My attempts to get myself back into shape, get myself out of the rut, I would attempt to go back to my old habits when I was operating optimally. And I would fail because very much not the same person. And instead of cutting it down or lowering my expectations of myself, I would quit. So when I figured that out, that it was humility that was required, and I changed my mindset to one of all progress is good progress, I started to see improvement. I started in one area because that's the only, because you have to start small. Started in one area, just 5 minutes a day. But then as I stayed consistent in that 5 minutes, and I celebrated it as a win, even if it was really small, even if it felt pathetically small, it started to change the way that I approached everything else in my life. I decided to actually try again. I decided to allow myself to try again. And I mean, once I allowed myself to try again, mixed with my efforts, I decided to get better. From the ground up to up. I mean, the beautiful thing is that once you kind of get a little bit of momentum going, then it's very much a snowball effect. You're kind of just similar to how once you get started on a downward trajectory, it becomes easier and easier to go down. Once you actually get started on an upward trajectory, it becomes easier to go up. But oftentimes the hardest thing is to start. It is those first few weeks, first few days, maybe the first month. It is the beginning that's oftentimes the hardest part.